Oona the Unvanquishable. Wandering an arid wasteland, Oona, swordfighter extraordinaire, confronts a desert plague at an abandoned well. Issue 3, Scourge of the Forsaken Sky. Oona shaded her eyes from the scorching sun as she surveyed the arid expanse. A wasteland, dreary and pallid, stretched out before her. Seemingly tranquil sand dunes hid the bones of past civilizations like a remorseless killer. A pile of stones spotted from a distance proved to be a fallen watchtower when she reached it. The unforgiving desert had reduced it to rubble, yet there was enough left standing to provide refuge for the night. She wrapped herself in her cape and fur cloak and awaited the chilling winds that came every evening. The desert was a paradox of extremes. The next morning, Oona scavenged, finding nothing, not even a bug. She was fortunate that she left camp at the northern reaches with a full water skin, but her desert misadventure had reduced that luck to a few drops. A handful of breadcrumbs at the bottom of her pack were her only remaining rations. Oona was undaunted by the wilderness. She let her warrior's training guide her, but she knew if she did not find water and food soon, she would fall victim to the desert. As Oona left the fallen watchtower, the sands shifted. The morning breeze conspired with the dawning light to reveal an ancient road just beyond. Oona noted that it ran north-south. She suspected that the demoness's portal had thrown her into the Great Karzan Desert. If so, she needed to head due south until she reached the fabled port city of Deirdrea. Facing the rising sun, Oona turned to her right and walked the lonely dust-blown road, wrapping her cape around her head for protection against the torrid sun. By midday, a structure appeared ahead in the heat and dusty haze. Oona tempered her expectations. She had seen enough mirages. When it became clearer, she sighed. More ruins. But there was something that stood out in the blanched landscape. Color. Focusing her weary, sun-strained eyes, Oona beheld a green blur of trees. Fig trees. Several of them surrounding an auspicious pile of field stones. Oona ran to the trees, inspecting the surroundings, and began dismantling the stone pile. Once cleared, she found metal doors that sealed a stone-lined well. She dropped a pebble into the well and held her breath, exhaling when she heard a splash. Reaching into the well's darkness, she found a rope. Oona pulled up the bucket at the end of the rope and drank directly from it. The trees were busy in a strange breeze that had kicked up since she arrived. Oona barely noticed as she refilled her flask and refreshed herself, taking off her boots to wash her feet. Wisps of dust flew about as she examined the ruins next to the well. The only standing structure was a roofless husk of a house, its walls slowly eroded by the elements.
Greetings,
Oona said to a man, the first person she had seen in days. He greeted her with silence as he sat, leaning against the house, staring lifelessly into the distance. By the side of the corpse, mummified in the dry desert climate, were a pair of sandals he had removed before falling into his eternal slumber. They were Oona's size. Oona expected to find nothing inside the ruined house, but was disappointed nonetheless. She sifted through rubbish heaped in one corner, finding a few vessels that were still usable. A flask with stirrup handles could be useful for carrying extra water. A cooking pot, however, was useless without food. There was nothing else in the heap but potsherds and torn supply sacks. At least she could make a meal from the figs, she thought, as she grabbed a sack and headed back to the trees to fill it with fruit. Once her thirst was slated and stomach full, Oona fell asleep under the tree's afternoon shade. Closing her eyes, she found herself back at the temple of Alsunai, where she had been dedicated as a warrior princess. Acolytes surrounded her, chanting. The temple's high priestess, in her tall, feathered headdress, stood before Oona and declared in a loud voice,
"Forsaken!
It wasn't my choice.
Oona pleaded. Again, someone yelled,
Forsaken!
It was her father's voice, but when she turned, she saw the mummified corpse raising an emaciated finger to the sky. The acolytes closed in on her, their eyes dark and bulbous, their lips buzzing. Jarred awake by the unsettling dream, Oona opened her eyes to a locust crawling next to her foot. A dark cloud moved rapidly across the near horizon, shifting in a zigzag manner. More locusts landed amongst the trees, where they gnawed at the wood. Each one was larger than the last. Locusts the size of cats and dogs fell like rain from the sky. A sharp, piercing feeling alerted her to a locust the length of her arm, biting at her ankle.
Ow!
She kicked it off and stomped its head with her bare foot. Quickly, dagger in hand, she made her way to the well. A 2-cubit-long locust bit into her arm. She jabbed at its thorax until her blade cut through its shell, killing it. Another flew at her face. She slashed repeatedly across its underside. Wings severed, it fell to the ground. Oona grabbed her pack and cape and jumped inside the well. She shut the metal door tightly while grappling from the rope. The sound of scraping earth alerted her to a hole between the stones that lined the well. There, a locust was burrowing its way inside. With her dagger, Oona stabbed its eye. Another followed, and she sliced its head open. She pulled both forward, using their carcasses to seal the breach. A gap below the metal door provided Oona with an outside view. The surrounding area was covered by swarming insects. Hanging from the rope, she listened to their horrific buzzing. A cackling sound shot through the air, and the swarm parted, revealing a locust the size of a horse.
This must be their queen.
She thought. The queen locust stared back with its cold insect eyes. It leaped from Oona's view shed. A resounding thud followed as it landed on top the sealed well. Oona clung to the door tightly, using all her strength to keep it shut from the inside. Outside, the monstrous insect pounded the well. The metal doors buckled under her weight. Each assault shook the stone-lined walls. Oona did not know how much longer she could hold on. Suddenly, with a loud clap, the pounding stopped. Peering through the gap, Oona saw the insects scattering into an ever-changing sky. Fierce gusts drove away the swarm. Dust whipped into Oona's eyes. As she ducked below, she could hear wind-blown sand peppering the metal doors. A howling sandstorm swept across the well. For over an hour as the storm raged, Oona clung to the rope. Gradually, the sounds faded. The sandstorm moved on, leaving Oona to dig herself out from under the layers of sand now covering the metal doors. The insects had consumed everything. The trees, once lush, were now reduced to sticks and branches. A few bony pieces were all that was left of the mummified corpse. Oona's boots and fur cloak were gnawed to bits. Drifts of sand were everywhere. So too were dead locusts, stragglers left behind by the swarm. She picked one up and gutted it with her dagger. That evening, Oona watched the sunset. Colors danced across the sky as the distant sandstorm moved westward. When nighttime came, she made a fire with wood from the dead fig trees. She prepared her meal over the fire and contemplated the desert. After days of scarcity, it now provided an abundance. Oona smiled as she bit into the cooked locust. The desert was truly a paradox of extremes. To be continued in Issue 4, Death Comes from the River. Oona the Unvanquishable is written by Malcolm Tiberius North. Voice performance, production, and sound design by Brad Gerhowski, and originally appeared in Scribe and Sigil, a free online zine celebrating pulp fantasy fiction. For more from Malcolm North, visit malcolmnorth.com. And for Brad Gerhowski, visit thevoiceofbrad.com. Scribe and Sigil can be found at scribe-and-sigil.com. Copyright 2026, all rights reserved.